discussion, which is on driving marketplace with API ecosystems and open banking. Our moderator is a gentleman you've already heard from today, Chetan and Parekh, if you'd like to come up on stage, Chetan. And his panel, Felipe Martinez, CIO of Revolut, of Cynergy Bank, Rajesh Mirjankar, Managing Director and CEO. Ségolène Démoulin, Chief Product Officer, Skaleet.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, warm welcome post lunch, and it's always difficult to focus post lunch, but I have really interesting panel with me today. And again, we're going to be discussing driving the marketplace with API ecosystem and open banking, which is all the buzzwords and how a marketplace can drive the financial services. I have with me Felipe. Felipe is a CIO for Revolut, and again, Revolut is a global story in terms of what they've achieved and what they plan to achieve in the years to come. So it'll be very, very interesting to hear his experience of a couple of decades. And of course, he's played 2 decades of roles in Finestra, Accenture, and multiple organizations. So comes with a deep experience on customer perspective. I have Michael with us. Michael Rennie is the Chief Operating Officer of Cynergy Bank. Again, those in UK may know the bank. Very, very specialist bank with business owners as a segment. And a lot of us spoke today about very interesting personal segmentation. Here is a real life bank who's done a personal segmentation to 2 or 3 different segments of businesses and how they deliver their services using cloud and other platforms. We have Rajesh Mirjankar with us, who is himself a thought leader. His company, Kiya.ai, has just launched banking metaverse, and he has 2 very, very interesting products around core banking and RegTech solution. So it'll be interesting to hear a technocrat's perspective about the whole API piece. We have also Ségolène. She's come in from Paris. She's a Chief Product Officer for Skaleet. Skaleet is a next generation core banking fintech platform, completely on cloud. And they have had a very interesting success in France and Africa, French-speaking Africa. So very, very warm welcome to all of you. And again, privileged to have this panel with us. So I think first thing is the marketplace. And again, there's no better person to ask this, Philip. When someone says marketplace and the opportunities from financial services perspective, it'll be very interesting to hear how you personally and Revolut thinks of these opportunities and what can open APIs can help creating the market opportunities.
Yeah. So probably I will start with a topical sentence, which is saying that yes, it's a great opportunity for banking industry to have the API economy, but also it's quite a challenge, no? Because there are lots of things that you need to do as an organization to be ready to actually capture that opportunity. Modern technology, competition, new fintechs doing great things, but even actually regulators like in the UK pushing for the open banking agenda have created, have enabled this opportunity. And how you quantify this opportunity is, you have ways of extending your value proposition, serving your customers much better, understanding them better as well, make a better use of the data you collect by interacting with them, and all of that contributing to have a better agility, speed to market, how you push product features, and being able to adapt yourself better to what is happening in the market, which is quite a lot nowadays. No? So probably the best way to illustrate the opportunity is going through a couple of examples of things that we are doing at Revolut, but also other competitors are doing very well. So for instance, when you look at how we can do personal loans, something that we have launched recently at Revolut. We are better known for FX and cards and payments, but we have launched already unsecured personal loans in 3 countries. And we did that in an amazing time, like in 4 months we were ready, technically speaking. There was perhaps an additional month in terms of being business ready to launch in a country, and that was because of our API architecture that allowed us to choose the best partners for every single step in the onboarding on the origination process. So if you go through what is the origination process for a loan, we have different partners for KYC, for fraud check and prevention, for credit scoring, where there are really good fintechs that collect the information through the open banking framework, through transaction history, to understand your patterns, your income, seasonality, that help complement the information you get from traditional risk repositories or credit risk bureaus. Identity verification, even from government agencies, you can go to the UK Companies House to verify the company identity, who are their directors. You can go to social security registers in many countries to validate not only the identity, but even the income, because social security knows how much is your salary. So we did so many integrations through APIs, and we were able to do that because our architecture was digitally native, was in the cloud, and was from the outset based on microservices that allowed that integration to really be fast and cost effective in a way that once we've done it in one country, we can really scale up and repeat the process for every single country we are expanding, in this case within Europe, even if the partners we are connecting or the repositories we are connecting are different. Okay? That's a really good example. Another one that I wanted to highlight is closer to what is the primary or the initial business we did at Revolut is stays. I don't know if you have heard of that. So now you can go to Revolut app and in partnership with some of the best marketplace in terms of doing reservations for your stays across the globe, without exiting the Revolut app, you can actually book your hotel in Paris. Will you invite me? Next week, or in Bangalore, if you are visiting some potential partners. And you, on top of that, you get the best price that partner offers in their own marketplace, and on top of that, we offer a 10% cashback. We did that again by integrating with many different APIs, the partner that offers the stays, but that's opening up the opportunity for additional business. Why? Because if we know you are visiting Paris, well, you may need euros, you may need travel insurance. You may want to have a good way to group the expenses you have had in Paris to see if you spend too much or too little, or where do you spend your money. So at the end, this is a really good opportunity to understand customers better and offer them more value by facilitating this integration through APIs, through many partners that can offer that additional value. Another one which is best known, and that I will finish there, is for business banking. We also do business banking through a separate app. Is the marketplace that you can do in terms of offering, integrating with partners with accounting packages through APIs or through files that you can do on a regular basis, invoice generation or invoice reconciliation and management. On top of that, there are other partners that we use to, by going through your transactions and patterns, you can analyze the cash flow. You can even forecast the cash flow and tell the customer you may have an issue next week because you have some obligations, you pay your salaries, you pay your suppliers. And all that is again because we can connect through APIs, through those partners who can do that for you perhaps much better than if we try to build everything ourselves. Okay? So I think this is, and so many more. The list is so long, and that's really the great opportunity. The challenge is that you need to have a core banking that is modern, that is built with the right architecture, that allows those integrations to be done at a scale, fast, in a very adaptable way, and in a cost-efficient way.
Very, very interesting, and some of the examples you took are the great opportunities already being taken by Revolut and multiple other programs. I think it's interesting, Michael, if you can really give a perspective. You've done a very interesting thing at Cynergy Bank with the very different segments. So when you look at APIs and APIs creating fantastic opportunities. How do financial institutions use this for innovation of its product and services?
Yeah, so essentially we're a relatively small bank, and listening to the previous panel as well, we're not here to build everything for ourselves from floor to ceiling, so to speak, and we do have a legacy architecture. We have a legacy stack at the moment because we've been around for 60 odd years. And we're in the process of obviously shifting to the cloud native environment. We've re-architected ourselves, as Felipe said, into microservices, etc. So, and what we've done is we've deliberately done that to embrace the use of APIs and the fintechs out there. So what I mean by that is it's clear that there are pieces that fintechs do incredibly well. The really good fintechs, I've sort of mentioned this many times before. They focus in on a specific use case for a specific area. They do it really well. They invest in it, and they make sure that they continue to invest in it going forward. What tends to happen is if they try to get too broad, I think that's when they start to lose the value that they provide to us as the consumer. So for me, it's a case of being able to go, well, they're doing it really well over there. I can bring that in, as Felipe says, at speed, at a much lower cost than trying to build it and configure it myself. Basically plug it into my system, and I can offer it out through my front end, to my customers. So and to be fair, we get to, once you start to partner with these fintechs, you get to help drive the innovation on their side as well to be part of it. But the beauty for me as the consumer is if they start to fall behind or things start to change, someone else will be in the market and I can go and find them and I can plug them in and consume a service. Or if someone starts to just provide a superior product, then I can go and find that product and obviously plug it into my system as well. So it's crucial for us that we created this API ecosystem so we could do that, but it's not just for the banking services, and Felipe gave an example there around booking hotels. We're looking at the same thing within Cynergy. We're not booking hotels, but our segment and our space is a lot of our customers are property entrepreneurs, right? And we look at it and we go, well, we can give you the standard, banking services that you want, but there's complementary non-banking services that would be really neat to be able to offer you through our front end, and building on that. So, for example, just something simple as a cash flow. We've got, we focus on the M in the SME or SMB, as Conrad was talking about earlier, but fundamentally for us as well, we've got a lot of customers who were small enterprises. They've suddenly grown to a medium enterprise, and sort of the classic things that you need to now have from an infrastructure perspective as a medium enterprise is very different to when you're a small enterprise. So if we can support them on that, that's really important. So suddenly having things like having integrations to your accounting systems, potentially HR elements, payroll, but something like a cash flow, for us, we can make the tool available using open banking. We can pull in the various other bank accounts and information, and for us, we can then go, well, actually, we can see that on the 10th of every month, you tend to have a cash flow squeeze because you've had a lot of money suddenly going out to all of your various suppliers in those first few days, and we could extend a line of credit at that point. So that's kind of the beauty of this is there's advantage to us, but it's also more important that we can then offer those services. So we are constantly looking not only at the fintechs from a banking perspective, but certainly at complementary services for our customers, so that ultimately they come to us and they get that suite of services. So that's from an innovation perspective, it's really a case of going, how can we personalize services? How can we bring them in at speed? Who's offering the best of breed in the market? Where am I going to move to next? For me, the challenge I've got right now, being frank and open and honest, is actually building the core infrastructure underneath to be able to accept that. So we're almost there, but it's been a long, hard slog to get to that position, while still maintaining an operational bank that's growing at a rate of knots on this side. But yeah, if I look at the difference between my old stack, where to bring a product to market is taking me between 6 and 9 months and costing me in the order of £500,000, right? Which is quite frankly ridiculous. And then you listen to Conrad and you're talking about 2-week sprints, and that's where we'll be, and we know we'll be there. So that's the challenge I have here in the old space. But putting in the new tech and embracing the APIs and the fintechs, I won't have that problem. I certainly won't be waiting 6 to 9 months, and I certainly won't be spending £500,000.
Very interesting, Mike. Rajesh, you've been listening to the retail story and the business banking story. You and your team have innovated on the banking platform, RegTech platform. So when you look at from technology perspective on some of these innovations which API economy is offering, how do you see towards your customers' service delivery?
Yes. So when we looked at, it's a challenge as well as an opportunity when you have a product suite that is covering everything from core banking to RegTech and then digital banking. And I think that's where we also had the advantage that we could re-architect what we want to take as best of breed and work on those elements. So offering the customers the ability to just go for a RegTech solution or just go for the omni-channel solution or the entire suite including the core. So when we look at API based banking or API economy as such, what we've seen is that primarily it's the customer who comes first, and the banks are then looking to provide the sort of business products that can get benefits to the customer, but importantly hold the customer. So what happened in payments with the POS machines of you had banks that went out and acquired the merchants by providing POS machines. That's a similar exercise that's happening on banking now with the API economy, where you look to acquire a customer through your channels. Each channel is an acquisition opportunity, and you've got to then hold on to that opportunity with, as Michael mentioned, the best of breed products, making sure that that's the best the customer gets from anywhere in the market. An important aspect there we've noticed is that there's in all of these aspects that come in, there's very little that the core does, because the core is just about being simple and scalable, and the rest of it sits in another layer of being able to manage, importantly, the customer journeys. I think one of the winning factors for any firm would be, or any bank would be, the ability to manage a customer journey of whether it's an acquired customer or your host for that customer's data, and find out what they're doing in terms of each of their transactions that are happening through open banking, rather than seeing it as a threat. When open banking was introduced in UK, I think many of the banks saw that as a compliance requirement more than an opportunity. It so continues to be with quite a few banks even now, where they say, okay, do I provide all the 167 APIs, or do I look at 50, 60 that are required for compliance and tick the box? And that's the aspect of how you think about the business. Do you trust your customer to say that they think you're the best, or do you then say that I'll hold on to the customer for as long as they think we are the best? So it's about that aspect that we look to manage through technology. When we've looked at the launch of the metaverse, for example, the reason we did that was an extension of what we saw as omni-channel. Because when you look at the metaverse of what it is emerging, it was a social media channel where you don't own any of the customer journeys. The customer comes there, and what you're having is a transaction. And guess what? Even that transaction is crypto, so it probably wouldn't come through your books. So if you look at the threat for banks, when you look at an API economy and things like that, the reason why metaverse, in terms of a banking metaverse, made sense is because through the crypto world, you would find about $1.5 trillion that have moved away from the banking system to create a parallel sort of a movement of money. So if you ever were to write obituaries for banking, it is not when the fintechs came out, or it's not when you have the other challenger banks coming out. It is when you find that there is a parallel economy that's able to run without banks. So when you look at what you need to operate, I think the opportunity for banks is to say that how do you offer products that are similar, like what is offered in the metaverse, because it obviously has its great capabilities around visualization and the ability to sort of render visually what Felipe put in as the travel opportunity, to say that, okay, you're going to Paris, then this is what you'll see in Paris, and that entices the person to say, okay, maybe this is the place I need to do the booking. So those are aspects that we covered to say that banks will then have the capability to provide the similar technologies, but this time not have monies going through a parallel world, but going through the banking system.
Very interesting perspective from a technocrat's perspective. And again, looking at the whole thing from requiring to increasingly core banking becoming a collaborative space instead of a monolithic situation it used to be. It'll be interesting to understand, Ségolène, from your perspective, that when you and your company designed the next generation core banking on cloud, what was the thought process in a collaborative world? How and why you did what you did? So again, I think it'll be great to hear your perspective.
So in terms of open banking, so actually the move was for financial institutions who were used to be the one-stop shop for all financial services to be able to open and to actually integrate third-party providers into the picture, which seems to be first as a challenge or maybe a constraint to them. And interestingly enough, what we've seen so far in terms of open banking is really focused on, well, mostly on compliance. There are a lot of work that has been done on KYC for customer information verification, for instance, or even on digital identity, like to make sure that the customer who's making a transaction is the one, are the ones they say they are. But if we look at a bigger picture and if we look at the bank, at the financial institution itself, compliance or even party authentication are just two building blocks of the full environment. And there have been some effort being led, so for instance, by the BIAN, which is Banking Industry Architecture Network, which is today a reference model. And so they have been broken down a financial institution, and there are about, in their model, 250 building blocks actually making up a bank. And so when you see like everyone, every actor focusing on this compliance and KYC issue, one may ask, maybe there are some opportunities in, well, having some other building blocks and actually integrating other building blocks in our ecosystem. So this is kind of the way we approach it at Skaleet. So we are cloud native, so we didn't have this first, well, architecture pain point if you want. But then we said, okay, today we say that we are a core banking platform. What does it mean? And basically, what do our customers expect from us? What are the building blocks that we want to cover? And which are the ones that we want to leave out and integrate with partners? Because as part of the ecosystem, they are better as we are. And actually, this is not where our customer awaits us. And so by doing that, we've been integrating with more and more partners. So as an example, I mean, for KYC and for KYC and for compliance, we have integrated with partners, and so we are API native. So the integration was quite easy that way, and so progressively, in the way that we're constructing our platform, we are not thinking actually as a monolith, as you were saying it, but more and more thinking on business capabilities. What is the value that we want to offer our customers? And the ways we have to think on these building blocks are more in these terms. I mean, business capability. I want to do current account. What do financial institutions, what does it mean handling current accounts? What do the customer wants when we speak about current account? And then build something very specific based on this built-in block, excel at it, and maybe leave it to other to handle, let's say, the debit cards or issue device administration or whatever other building blocks there might be. So what is also interesting in that and in that approach is that, so this is business focused. I mean, the building blocks that we are creating are business oriented in terms of bringing value to customers and in terms of ROI and so on. And then what we see also is that, so it is driven by business, but at some point the technical architecture comes in as well. Meaning that if we want to be open banking, so one thing is we are just at the first step with compliance, KYC and so on, but open banking is much broader than that, and core banking is actually be distributed banking in the future. And to do that, it's, yeah, API are centerpiece, but APIs are like the visible part of the iceberg. And then if the underlying IT system are actually a big bowl of a tangled spaghetti, it's not going to work anyway. So you have to review your architecture as well to match so that these business capabilities actually match the architecture. And so basically what is, and I think for financial institutions, and if we look ahead, one of the main things is that, so for one thing, product and technology are just like two poles apart, they're together, and it's building safe contained system. It's working on business capabilities that we can offer, and then it's like a pick and choose solution where the financial institutions is actually bridging or bringing together these business capabilities and creating the best of breed based on these building blocks.
That's very, very interesting, sir. Rajesh, when you look at this as a CEO of an organization who owns core banking, and it's been there for a couple of decades, when you look at modernizing core, right, what crosses the mind in terms of should you be doing it, if you're doing it, what's the kind of time frame on customers like Felipe and Revolut, which are completely innovative? How do you meet their demand from API's perspective?
I think the core would be in making sure that when we say the core as what we define, it would be more of the core ledger. So the full focus on that in terms of re-architecting will be to make sure it is scalable and to make sure that it is simple. So when I'm getting in queries for balances, make sure that's given, because an API is asking that, and maybe my job is not to make sure that it's going across to a customer who's mine, it's somebody else's, and the whole point of the core at that point was to give the balance out. Likewise, if it's a transaction, making sure that the transaction happened successfully within the decided time that I have for timeout from the open banking ecosystem. And mind you, ecosystem as open banking does not mean that it's not the bank's customer. It could be the bank's customer from a mobile app per se, trying to get to you. So what we defined as core earlier, if I were to just get back to say when we designed core 2 decades ago, was the core processing system where all the processes were human driven from a front end that was again driven by the core. And then you had the decoupling of that and going to a teller system, and then you had other point of like for example ATMs coming in and POS machines coming in. But now the scale is completely different. If you look at the transactions managed by the front end of what was the ownership of the core, it's probably about 10 to 12%. The rest of it is coming from either external APIs or digital transactions that are coming in from the ecosystem. The second part is about saying what does the core own? Core is no longer in that way core, because you say that you want to operate zero trust, which means you have a separate identity management system. You say you want to provide hyper personalization, so that involves getting in artificial intelligence and machine learning to manage customer profile. You want to have flexibility in terms of being able to provide customers online product design on multiple channels. That entails the fact that you now have customer journeys being automated, and all of those, when you imagine that being done in a core engine, that's not clearly possible. So what we've looked at is not to be over ambitious to say what the core is to achieve. So we kept it very simple. We said, let's make the core scalable, provide the microservices architecture to be able to render external services to whoever asks for it, whether it's our own system, which is the omnichannel or the metaverse, or whether it's an open banking API that's asking for the service, and make sure that the SLAs on that are met. I remember, and some of the lessons you learn is not necessarily from your own systems, successes or failures, but also others as well. So we provide omnichannel solutions to a lot of banks, and one of the key markets for us is India. We manage about 25% of the digital volumes in India, which is about roughly 20 billion transactions a year. And managing omni-channel for 20 billion transactions, and each bank having, I'm talking about a cluster of about 16 to 18 banks and not hundreds. So that means that the cores for these need to provide the services as quickly. So when we looked at a ratio of technical declines to say how it works, you find that a lot of it comes from the delays happening from the core. And those are lessons learned from us, for us to say, let's make our core quite scalable. So I think that's where we've had learnings as a company because of the experience of having an exposure to other channels. Those are the lessons that we learned from the API economy. When you look at, again, a stack that's available as services to the customer, whether it's the capability to provide just financial services or even non-financial services, I think one of the key aspects is that you have the customer relationship, and then you own that aspect to say that the customer's capability to do transactions is something that the bank's key focus should be. The ability to manage profitability and all that comes in core product processors. So now let's consider the change in how technology has moved. You've got 5G and IoT as a combination. which brings superpower, high bandwidth capability to deal with smart devices across. And you can have 1 trillion devices communicating. Now, is the core going to manage it? Not possible, because it's going to happen in another layer. And then you have the capability to have hyper-converged infrastructure and cloud. So I think when we will look at leveraging technology, I'll go with the latter to say, when it applies to the core, to say, make it scalable using hyper-converged infrastructure and cloud. But when you look at the other aspects that are available to the customers as smart devices or IoT or 5G, then you have the emergence of edge computing. We'll rather have the enablement of edge computing with our core than to say that we will challenge it saying we want to manage everything within that aspect. So there is a movement of what the core is, and to put it simply in few words, I think the aspect of what CORE means is slowly guiding towards saying any system that manages customer journeys, any system that is able to render the hyper-personalization, because everything is about the customer and everything is about the bank making profits and finding out which are the products that make money for them. How are the customers approaching you? Why do they approach you? And why are they leaving? And I think that is not necessarily the ledger system.
Very interesting in a practical perspective to what core can and can't do. And Felipe, I'll come to you. And as a bank, when you see these modernization requests, and of course, Michael spoke about he having a limitation with his core, but at Revolut, you had an ability to reimagine. And when you reimagine the core as a modern core or a customer-centric product processor, what considerations you kept in mind while choosing and modernizing your services?
Yeah, so I think we had the advantage that we started from modern technology, so we are digitally native. But also, because we were ambitious from the outset, we wanted to have the right core banking architecture and the right technology and infrastructure that would allow us to actually scale up as quickly as we are doing. We are about to hit 20 million customers soon. So we always wanted to have customer needs at the center of our architecture, how we understand the customer, what are the interactions that we have. I will refer to that later as well, but also very important, the data that is created in all those interactions. We are very data-driven organization in terms of culturally, but also in terms of technology. No? Because if you collect that data in a way that you can actually understand it better and to produce the insights you need for that, going forward in the future, you can actually learn and show your customers that your proposition is relevant for them. How that data you are collecting is reverting back and creating value for them. So I think part of our success is based on having started with that mindset from the very beginning, which obviously it's a little bit of a luxury being a new entrant or relatively new player. It's more of a challenge for traditional banks, but I would say this is a big part of our success. Mm-hmm.
Very, very interesting. So moving further, and again, this question is to all of you because you all come with a very, very different perspectives. And how do you visualize with the API economy and open banking, what marketplace will unfold in future? And when you look at it from your perspective, I'll start with Ségolène, from a technocrat's perspective, how do you visualize the future marketplace?
Well, I think from a technology's perspective, basically we're moving towards what I'd call composable architecture. But I quite agree with my colleagues here in the sense that, so I wouldn't say that we are customer-centric, I would say that we're customer-obsessed, but we're product-centric. So basically everything starts with the customer, the end-to-end customer journey from the first action to the last one, and who are the people involved in the process and at each step of the process. And actually by breaking down all these different processes that financial institutions have, we realize that basically what we got progressively are service domain, which are called in different contexts. I mean, on the onboarding, an onboarding process for a customer, for instance, the first action is the customer wanting to onboard. Then, at some point, you need someone from the back office getting the information, checking the information is right, then making KYC check and so on, making compliance check as well. And then you also need to verify that all information is there, which products and services the customer is eligible to, and then you're gonna maybe open an account, and based on the offer that the customer has selected, you might open a card and so on. But basically, if you look and if you break down this process, you can extract different service domains that are being called. One being, onboarding is the process, but you have a process of KYC verification. You have the process of only the customer onboarding, so making the request. You have a service domain just for creating the account. So you have also a process for creating the card. And so composable architecture is the same as when you look at a car and you have like different components. When you need to create a new car, you're not gonna build the components all over again, and every time you need to build a new car. And likewise, when you want to build new customer experience, when you want to reach new markets, when you want to create new products, these processes should not cost all the services to be rebuilt all over again. So this idea of composable architecture is actually to progressively build and enrich the different components or building blocks, and making sure that every time that you want to add a new process or a new piece in the process, basically what you're enriching are these services, and then you're going to get an increased time to market, you're going to get to cost reduction and so on. And so progressively, and again, product and technology are only one, and while we were, a couple of years back, able to deliver new processes on a 2 to maybe 6 months processes, now we are in continuous delivery mode, meaning that every 2 weeks we are able to add new pieces, to add new use cases into our process, and so it's much more faster. The client can see this increment, they can come back to us with feedback, and basically what we enrich again are these services. So I think it's a very virtuous loop, if you wish, to create and to build this building block and to reach this composable architecture.
Wonderful. Then, Michael, when you look at as a banker, the whole thing, and marketplace unfolding with companies like Revolut and all challenging the play, and the big dinosaurs we spoke earlier in the day about are again slowly transforming themselves piece by piece. How do you see as a banker this marketplace?
Yeah, I think ultimately, and I was talking about, you've just mentioned it, Ségolène, around the speed. It's about speed to market for products, but it's also the internal cycle times to actually, for example, get money out the door. So ultimately, my customers are coming. A lot of our customers are saying, "I've got a deal that's going down now. I really want to be able to borrow this money. I need confirmation now because I want to close the deal." Or I'm at an auction, for example, on a property, and I really want to know that I can borrow that money. And we need to be able to ultimately reduce the cycle time. So from a banking perspective, it's all about having the breadth of the products that we need and being able to adjust them as we need to, and bring them in at speed, but ultimately to get the money out the door to customers, or take their money in for that matter, but do it at speed. If 24 hours later they've got their credit-backed heads of terms, and it's gone through credit committee 2 days after that, and ultimately it's going through all its checks, and within 30 days the money's being drawn down, that's an amazing result for the end customer. So for us, it's about the speed, and we're a relationship managed bank, right? So our relationship managers are out there. Our customers love us for that. We're calling ourselves the human digital bank now. The purpose being is that we want to retain the human face. It's critically important for us, but everything behind that has to be digitized. For the reason our RMs were spending 80% of their time in the office turning the handle and 20% with customers, we're obviously flipping that on its head. The more time they spend with the customers, the better. But more importantly, having that ability to actually do the transaction then and there in the coffee shop or wherever they are. So coming back to it, I think it's about having that ability to innovate where we want to, at the speed that we want to be able to adjust it. And the key piece as well is personalization. It was touched on in an earlier panel, but the personalization element is really important for us. We all know that we live in a world of everything's on demand these days, right? And I see it with my 11-year-old daughter, literally, and she loves reading books, but if she's not stimulated for 2 minutes, then she's she's finding something else that she can do, right? The ability to just sit around and think doesn't really happen these days, and customers want to do things when they want to do it. And it could be at 2 a.m. in the morning, it could be when they're standing on top of a high-rise building that's being built and they suddenly need an additional line of credit, for example, and they want to consume the service however they want to consume it. So I think what we'll start, that personalization piece, I think will come more and more into the innovation that's happening. And we're certainly interested in that because I need to be able to offer a service to my customers how they want to consume it, and if they want to use the phone or they want to use a mobile or they're on their laptop or whatever it is, they need to be able to, and what we want to do is ensure that the service that they get is identical regardless of which channel they choose to use as well.
So it's customer centricity, which is I think, and speed to the market, which you've looked at. And Rajesh, when you see marketplace unfolding from a technocrat's perspective again, do you see it different from composable banking highlighted by Ségolène, speed to market? What else do you see?
So I agree with Ségolène about the composable core, because it makes a lot of sense getting the right sort of processes orchestrated, and the way in which, or the speed in which the process would get orchestrated and the simplicity is going to eventually determine the customer satisfaction on that. Likewise, as Michael mentioned about the personalization, my 2 bits to that would really be the customer experience while going through that journey. So I'll come back to that pitch on metaverse, is the fact that, one of the things that people miss out with the aspect of apps coming in is the fact that you've got used to a few tiles on the mobile app and a few scrolls. And let's say if someone wanted to have a loan being processed, they get those 3 questions to answer, and most of the time it's always that 4th question that makes them wonder to say, I wish somebody had asked me this. And that's that special need. So when we looked at the concept of bringing in the human touch and getting in what we can afford to have as the near human touch with avatars, with what artificial intelligence can provide and what we can afford with the huge bandwidth that 5G and IoT 5G would rather render to smart devices, we thought it will make absolute sense to make sure the experience is better. Most of the memories that people have, either good or bad, are to do with the memories that they have with humans, because it's more emotional, you got content and you got context. And that's what we tried to put together in the experience of the metaverse. So as a technocrat, when we thought about a product design, we said, let's bring across the experience of a modern branch. What would somebody expect from the so-called, now, if I were to term the case of smart human and not the smart device, what would they expect? And they would expect that 4th question to be answered, and they would expect a few more things to be provided as a profile to say, look, I've gone through your VAT returns, it shows that you probably need working capital for XYZ time, and can I provide you that? Nobody's asked that question when real humans were there. Imagine putting that across with virtual humans, they will love their experience. So I think it's about making sure that we capture data. This whole concept of alternate data really will make sense and will differentiate how firms hold on to their customers and how firms make profits.
Sure. And last word again from Felipe, yourself, when you look at Revolut and the whole future of the marketplace with open APIs.
Yeah, so it's a really good link because Rajesh has referred to data, and data is indeed the most valuable asset that banks hold. Yeah, not even the customer balances or the knowledge. Data is, and it's probably the one with biggest potential. And what open banking and the open API economy is a door to that data, to use it properly. But the data is owned by the customers, so you need to make it relevant for the customers. You need to explain really well what is the value that banks are going to create with them by having access to all that data, and later prove it. No, so I have a good example. It's not been easy to come today to London. I live in Milton Keynes in the north, so 2 hours driving. So my best friend today, apart from my friend Edgar, who was brave enough to drive into the city center, it's been Google. Because you put Google Maps and they know about the traffic situation, real time. They know transport options. So I knew that trusting Google was perfect because they would give me options in case there is an accident, in case the tube is not working. So it was a no-brainer to tell Google where I was, real time, and where I wanted to go. If a bank asked me, where are you going today? Can you share your location? You could think, oh, what the hell do you want that for? This is about trust. So I think the reason why open banking and the API economy is perhaps going a bit slower than we wanted or would like is because we have not yet got to that magic way to actually get the trust from customers so that explaining them what we are going to do with the data, and also obviously building the use cases that the data will present value with them. Okay, and that comes to understanding customers better. So I always say that customers don't buy a mortgage, customers buy a house, don't they? And often is the house of their dreams, where they want to raise their family, a house where they expect to live for the next 10, 20 years. And banks keep on coming, knocking on their doors, I have your best mortgage offer. Well, no, if you understand that that customer is in a life journey where they could buy a house perhaps in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, well, you start with helping them to save. How much is the house you could afford? How much is the deposit you want to save? I can help you getting the discipline or the education to save toward that goal. That comes to collecting data, but also explaining them that you are really a partner for their life cycle. It's not that you just want to sell the mortgage and bye-bye. Just to use an example from Revolut as well, yeah, it's a simple one. So we do also crypto, no? And we realize that some of our good customers were not really adopting crypto, and then we push some surveys and questions, okay, why that could be. So we are open to our customers. We want to understand better why you are not enrolling to crypto services. And we realized that there was a little bit of lack of confidence, but also lack of understanding of what the cryptocurrency is or how blockchain works. So we came up with the concept of learn and earn, which is basically we have pushed in our app some very short modules, 5-10 minutes training that explains blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, different use cases. And if you complete that, we give them for free some tokens. Not a Bitcoin because it's too expensive, but perhaps, a couple of Cardanos or, and that was really well received to the point that after that, not only we have had really positive feedback from customers, but also we have seen whenever we have done the marketing push, we have seen a tremendous uplift in the sign-ups for crypto. So we actually listen to customers. Yeah, I would like to get into crypto, diversify my investment, but I'm not confident enough. I don't know exactly what they are. We help them there.
Very, very interesting perspectives. Any questions? Excellent. So I think we were too good. I think there are no questions. And many, many thanks to all of you for sharing your interesting perspectives.